Hi, this is another English journal for IB, and I'm still doing Things Fall Apart. And today I have two stories for you. I'm jumping around in part one because these are really good stories. The first one is of the mosquito and the ear. Mosquito had asked Ear to marry him, whereupon Ear fell on the floor in uncontrollable laughter. "How much longer do you think you will live?" she said. "You are already skeleton." Mosquito went away humiliated, and in time he passed her and told the ear that he was still alive. It's a story pretty much explaining why, mosquitoes buzz by your ears. He's telling the ear that he's still alive. And this one's also a really good one. It's why tortoise's shell is uneven. Once upon a time, all the birds were invited to a feast in the sky. They were very happy and began to prepare themselves for the great day. They painted their bodies with red camwood and drew beautiful patterns on them with uli. Tortoise saw all these preparations and soon discovered what it all meant. Nothing had happened in the world of the animals that ever escaped his notice. He was full of cunning. As soon as he heard of the great feast in the sky, his throat began to itch at the very thought. There was a famine in those days, and Tortoise had not eaten in 2 moons. His body rattled like a piece of dry stick in his empty shell, so he began to plan how he would go to the sky. Tortoise had no wings, but he went to the birds and asked to be allowed to go with them. "We know you too well," said the birds when they had heard him. "You are full of cunning. You are ungrateful. If we allow you to come with us, you will soon begin your mischief." "Do you not know me?" said the tortoise. "I am a changed man. I have learned that a man who makes troubles for others is also making it for himself." Tortoise had a sweet tongue, and within a short time all the birds agreed that he was a changed man, and each gave him a feather, to which he made 2 wings. At last the great day came, and Tortoise was the first to arrive at the meeting place. When all the birds had gathered together, they set off in a body. Tortoise was very happy and voluble as he flew among the birds. He was soon chosen as the man to speak for the party because he was a great orator. There is one important thing which we must not forget," he said as they flew on their way. "When people are invited to great feasts like this, they take names for the occasion. Our host in the sky will expect us to honor this old custom." None of the birds have heard of this custom, but they knew that Tortoise, spite of his failings in other directions, was widely traveled, who knew of the customs of different people, and so they each took a new name. When they had all taken, Tortoise also took one. He was to be called All of You. At last the party arrived in the sky, and their hosts were very happy to see him. Tortoise stood up in many colored plumages, thanked them for their invitation. His speech was so eloquent, all the birds were glad they had brought him, and nodded their heads in approval of what he said. The host took him as the king of the birds especially. He looked somewhat different from the others. After coal and nuts had been presented and eaten, the people of the sky set before the guests the most delectable dishes Tortoise had ever dreamed of. The soup was brought out hot from the fire in the very pot which it had been cooked. It was full of meat and fish. Tortoise began to sniff out loud. There was pandied yam and also yam pottage, cooked with palm oil and fresh fish. There was also pots of palm wine. When everything had been set before the guests, one of the people of the sky came forward and tasted a little from each pot. Then he invited the birds to eat. But Tortoise jumped to his feet and said, "For whom have you prepared this feast?" "For all of you," replied the man. Tortoise turned to the birds and said, "You remember my name is All of You. The custom here is to serve the spokesman first, then the others later. They will serve you when I have eaten." He began to eat, and the birds grumbled angrily. The people of the sky thought it must be their custom to leave all the food for their king. And so Tortoise ate the best part of the food, then drank 2 pots of the palm wine. So he was full of food and drink, and his body filled out his shell. The birds gathered around to eat what was left, and to peck at the bones he had thrown all about the floor. Some of them were too angry to eat. They chose to fly home on an empty stomach. But before they left, they each took the feather they had lent to Tortoise. And there he stood in his hard shell full of food, but without any wings to fly home. He asked the birds to take a message for his wife, but they refused. In the end, Parrot, who had felt more anger than the others, suddenly changed his mind and agreed to take the message. "Tell my wife," said Tortoise, "to bring out all the soft things in my house to cover the compound with them, so I can jump down from the sky without very great danger." Parrot promised to deliver the message and went away. But when he reached Tortoise's house, he told his wife to bring out all the hard things in the house, and so she brought out all her husband's hoes, machetes, spears, guns, and even his cannon. Tortoise looked down from the sky and saw his wife bringing things out, but he was too far to see what they were. When all seemed ready, he let himself go. He fell and fell and fell until he began to fear he would never stop falling. And then, like the sound of the cannon, he crashed onto the compound. He broke his shell into pieces, but there was a medicine man in the neighborhood. Tortoise's wife sent for him and gathered all the bits of shell and stuck them together. That's why Tortoise's shell is never smooth. And those are my stories. Thank you.